Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Star Wars video. This is going to be my review for The Mandalorian Season 2 Episode 3, otherwise known as Chapter 11 overall, The Heiress. And this was exactly what we needed after the first two episodes were relatively light on plot. This one got us right back into where I think people's expectation levels were going into this season, with the rumors that there's going to be Bo-Katan, Boba Fett, Ahsoka. And the fact that this episode also had to sort of resolve last week's episode because we ended sort of still relatively in mid-air, that we still had to bring the Frog Lady back to her planet, introduce her husband and so on to get the next stage of the quest. This episode had quite a lot to do in terms of ending last episode, but also then, is it going to actually show us Mandalorians, or is it going to be more of a tease of like, I saw Mandalorians over here, he goes here, those people direct him over here. But no, within the first 10 minutes of this episode, you have met the three Mandalorians. Bo-Katan is the leader, and by the end of the episode, she is telling the Mandalorian that he needs to go to this planet to find Ahsoka Tano. Big moment, big reveal. This is the most hyped character for Season 2, is that we've known for quite a while that Ahsoka is going to be in The Mandalorian, and so this is going to be a huge moment for the show to see how they execute Ahsoka in live action. Because Bo-Katan worked because it fundamentally is a human character in Mandalorian armor. They've got that right many times before. Very different story though with an alien character like Ahsoka, because she's Togruta, and you know, I think it's been a little bit of a mixed bag when they've done Togrutas in terms of how well the actual outfit, makeup and stuff like that has been. So hopefully they've put tons of time into making sure the design works and so on, and they can get that right, because they really have to get it right, because Ahsoka isn't just like a character from the Clone Wars. She is like the Clone Wars character. She, especially the last few years, especially now after Clone Wars Season 7, she is such a popular character that she probably is one of the most popular characters in the Star Wars franchise, so they have to get her right. And that's why it's so important, I think, that Dave Filoni is such a key, person on this show, being one of the showrunners. He is going to make sure that, like, basically his character, to a degree, is done well. So that is something really exciting to look forward to. My guess is probably not next week, but the week afterwards. So probably episode 5 from Season 2 will probably be when we see Ahsoka. I do think there will be another sort of more side questy style episode next, getting towards Ahsoka. But who knows? They could surprise us. Maybe cliffhanger reveal at the end of the next episode. The pacing's been a little like, they've had a slower episode like episode 2, much faster episode like this episode, so they could really switch it up. We just don't know right now. So let's sort of go through the episode and recap it a little bit. So they had to resolve last week's episode with the Frog Lady and bringing her back, and I like that we just jumped straight in with, okay, we're here, we just have to land. I'm glad that they didn't have a whole episode like in space having to deal with the cramped conditions. They just got straight down to it. And this was a fun sequence because you saw that, like, okay, he's a good pilot, but he's not like Anakin Skywalker. So, he basically does everything he needs to do. He's skilled, but right at the last second, the engine blows out, it falls into the water. That sort of is very defining of the Mandalorian. He's skilled and he tries hard, but he always takes a hit sort of in the middle of a fight and has to be a little bit of a brawler at times. And similarly here, times the acceleration to stop the descent really fast perfectly, but can't account for the engine blowing out, so it's in the water. Fun scene. But then, okay, Frog Lady is back on her home planet. I really liked it, actually. Aquatic planet, so we are here at basically a port, both for spaceships but also for water vessels as well. And so you have Mon Calamari all around the place, Quarren all around the place, as well as the frog species, of course, which I guess is just frog. Okay. So that was quite fun to just see her kind of looking around for her husband, and you see her husband, and it's a big like, I actually care about these two being reunited. And so, really fun scene from a character we didn't know that long, but this show does a good job of being like, I'm glad that this has happened. And especially at the end, the fact that they confirm that they are going to have a child, so the line will continue. You actually like really feel for them, and it's a nice moment. But it was also like, please, Baby Yoda, please don't eat any more of the eggs, and please, with this newly hatched one, do not eat that. Because you're kind of like, they know Baby Yoda's really popular. I hope they don't overdo this, thinking that everyone's just going to excuse everything Baby Yoda does, because it might have been a little bit too much for some people if they had Baby Yoda eat their child. But they stayed away from it, and they continued to joke in that, like, the Mandalorian came in at the end and was just like, okay, I'm taking you out of here because you're eyeing up their new child. But nice moment. He congratulates them and leaves, and even just the fact that he left Baby Yoda with them as he went to do his mission was a nice thing of like, yeah, he's meeting these people along the way. He's showing that like people do ultimately trust him, and he trusts them, and that's just the sort of character that he is. So even the sort of less important part of this episode with the Frog Lady was actually kind of well done. But after that, we like accelerate pretty quickly through this stuff of like, he goes into the restaurant, uses the Mon Calamari money he got from like the first or second episode to pay the guy for information, as well as the child's food. The guy then introduces him to a Quarren fisherman, and they really quickly go out to sea because they're bringing him to where they saw the Mandalorians, but it's a trap. And so we get a bit of an action sequence here as Baby Yoda gets eaten, admittedly in its sort of floating cradle thing, but still it was like, whoa, Baby Yoda is in the middle of this beast. This is not good. And the Mandalorian is like trapped in their sort of like open center, sort of kind of catching section of their boat, and they're stabbing him with like knives, and like obviously it's difficult to injure him because he's so armored up, but it's like he has to stay on the move here or they'll get through the gaps in his armor. So pretty dangerous situation for the Mandalorian, because like I guess he can't activate his jetpack or most of his equipment because he is in the water and is tight, cramped, and all the while like Baby Yoda is getting like digested basically. So you're like, how's he going to get out of this? And we're nowhere near seeing the Mandalorians, and they just show up out of nowhere, 3 of them. Really cool sequences. They just deal with it, and then one of them goes in, comes out a few minutes later. She has Baby Yoda. He's back with the Mandalorian, and he has met the people he's wanted to meet this whole time. The core plot that we went into at the start of the first episode is finally like resolved. The first step of the quest, meet another Mandalorian to try and find out where to go next. Tick, right here. It's taken a little while, more than probably people would have wanted, but what a reveal it was when we finally got it, because it's not just 3 random Mandalorians from the group from before. Bo-Katan is here. Now, the other 2, I think the guy's name is Axe, and then the Sasha Banks character's name it begins with K. It wasn't said, I don't think, within the episode, but it's like, if you look at the subtitles as well as I think the actors at the end, it does say what the name is. I don't believe it's like a known character from before, so I think it is a new character, so it kind of confirms to us that, okay, Sasha Banks isn't playing Sabine, so I guess Sabine could theoretically be introduced whenever we get to Ahsoka later on, because that's the last we saw of her, pretty much. But still, it was cool to see this group here. And the best thing about this was that obviously they helped him because he's a Mandalorian, of course. But then the big moment that sort of changes things right at the start of the episode is that they introduce themselves after taking their helmets off. And I love the reaction here of like, he's just recovering from like nearly being killed and what happened to the child and meeting these Mandalorians. And the second they take their helmets off, he's just like, what are you doing? You are not Mandalorians. Where did you get that armor from? Because he thinks that is the only way Mandalorians are meant to be, is his style of Mandalorian. And so because it's Bo-Katan speaking about this, you know that she knows more about it than he does, basically. And so, kind of big reveal for him. And I like that the other guy says it. It's just like, oh, he's one of them. And we find out that, oh, Din is considered to be a child of the Watch. Now, obviously, if you know your Clone Wars stuff and the flashback with his flashback from the first season, you know that he was saved by the Death Watch. So when they say the Watch, it's a child of the Death Watch, and that the Death Watch are the ones who are the more sort of extreme Mandalorians who want to go back to the old ancient warrior ways of old, whereas Bo-Katan represents sort of the more modern style Mandalorians of like they've adapted, I suppose, to the times. It doesn't have to all be about being a warrior, but that is still a part of it, which is why I think you can see that she doesn't employ like all of the cultures, but she still says like this is the way to him. Now, is that just her interacting with him because she knows that that's the best way to deal with him, or because they still believe in a lot of the same things? It was still really, really interesting to see such a serious reaction from him to them taking their helmets off. And even Baby Yoda just looking up at him and just like, I know you don't take your helmet off much. Are you okay with this? was just a fun moment. And I suppose it's just this situation of like, he all of a sudden is being told that there's this whole other side to being a Mandalorian, and he kind of doesn't know what to do with that. And it obviously puts into question a lot of things of like the armorer we always sort of viewed as this like wise Mandalorian, but now we know she's sort of Death Watch basically, and that it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. Of like, does he realize he doesn't have to stick to the Mandalorian creed as heavily as he has been up to now, and we could see him take his helmet off a little bit more? Or is he going to be locked into this for the time being? That's going to be kind of telling. But I think it was a key scene, and I thought it was just really good to bring it up, the idea that he is not from Mandalore. He was found by the others. Sorry, I'm probably wrong when I say that, but the idea is like he was found by the others. He was not scheduled to be a Mandalorian warrior, but he was sort of brought into that because of the way things were going, basically, with the attack, as we saw from the droids and so on during the Clone Wars. So it was interesting to see her sort of pull rank a little bit and be like, no, this armor's been in my family for 3 generations. Like, you've made yours like over time, and none of your armor is like from someone from your family. This is the armor of my family because I'm from Clan Kryze, from Mandalore. And that was really good to see, of just like that introduction. And obviously this is Katie Sackhoff, who voiced Bo-Katan, so it is full-on Bo-Katan, which is perfect, exactly what you want. Great job in the role. They all look great in the armor, and they've really, I suppose, perfected using that armor and all of its iterations, like the big heavily armored Mandalorian from the earlier episodes, and the same with these ones here. From there, the Mandalorian actually just leaves. Once he has Baby Yoda back and finds out that they're of sort of different, creeds or different types of Mandalorians, he just straight up leaves. Now, admittedly, he gets into a little bit of trouble then by the Quarren's brother who was just killed, but they come back and sort of save him, and they quickly get down to having like a proper conversation. And so pretty much we get into this situation of like, I'll tell you what you want to know if you assist on the mission. That's how this is going to work. Very video gamey, do this thing for me and I'll give you the next stage of your quest. So perfect. And what made this run really work, obviously, is that we care about Bo-Katan's story as a character, because she wants to go back and become the leader of Mandalore again. And to do that, she wants to first regain the Darksaber. So she's trying to find Gideon, who obviously has it at this point, highlighting that at some point in the past, Gideon took the Darksaber from her. Now, whether that was because he defeated her in combat directly, or just in general, as like armies clashing against each other, she got captured, lost the Darksaber, and it was given to Gideon. Either way, she knows that basically he has it, and she wants to know where she can find him. That's important because the Darksaber is the symbol of sort of leadership on Mandalore. Sabine gave it to Bo because Bo was meant to be the leader, and we know what happened. The Imperial control of Mandalore, and now trying to get that back. And that's what's so interesting in terms of like the Mandalorian's quest to bring Baby Yoda back to bring Baby Yoda to a Jedi is so separate from that, to the point where when are we ever going to get around to potentially the Mandalorian like being involved in potentially taking back Mandalore? Or like, is that going to happen in like another series or what? Like, is he going to do that and then come back and end up being involved in that again? Or could we theoretically get episodes of this show down the line where the focus character isn't the Mandalorian and is instead like Bo-Katan for an episode or two as we see her try and take back Mandalore? Or does everything have to be about the Mandalorian himself encountering and seeing this stuff as it happens? That's what's going to kind of be interesting in terms of like these other kind of important characters who are going to be introduced. Bo-Katan, Ahsoka, I guess Sabine could be introduced. Are they only going to be on screen so long as like the Mandalorian is interacting with them, or are they going to be used as just as important characters? That's what's going to be kind of interesting going forward. Because obviously you don't want to just distract and have people care more about those characters than the Mandalorian, but you also have to use those characters. And that's kind of the key thing going forward, in that the mission here was to sort of build up supplies for Bo-Katan's forces. Take this weaponry from this ship from the Empire, and instead have that be weapons that her forces can use to assist the eventual attempt to take back Mandalore. They also take the ship, which is where kind of, the Mandalorian sort of freaks out a little bit. That wasn't part of the deal, but they have to go ahead with it. The mission's in progress. It's not too much extra work, but they get it back. I kind of liked what they did with the Imperials here. The commander guy in charge here actually had a little bit of character to him, and then you get the message from Gideon once they take over enough of the ship of like, enough of the ship has been compromised. You know what needs to be done. And he just kills the other two guys, takes control of the ship, and tries to crash it so that no one gets this material. But they manage to, stop that, take it out, pull the ship up, and succeed. Again, throughout this, some really nice action. I like the contrast in terms of the way he fights versus the way they fight. They are very much the sort of what you expect, Super Commando style Mandalorians, whereas the Mandalorian himself is much more, has that sort of bounty hunter style. He's more of a brawler in a way. They're very militaristic, like soldiers, as they kind of go against the walls and stuff like that and peek out at the right times, whereas he has that more sort of roguish style to him of like, he's just casually up against the wall, he just sort of like pokes out, just like where the others are like, full on, high-tech military stuff going on here. And just the way, even just the way they move, like he's much more like, open, and they're very like direct. I like that contrast of like, he probably has way more like specialized equipment than they do, but they are probably arguably more skilled in a way overall than him. But he probably is more resourceful. That was quite fun to see, of just like, yeah, he's always been a relatively like unique fighter, and I think he showed that perfectly when, to get to the bridge, they're sort of pinned down by the repeating blaster fire. So he just runs forward, takes a lot of hits, throws some bombs, and clears the path for them. That was kind of interesting, of like, he's like, I have to complete the mission, we're sort of stalled here, the altitude is falling, we're going to crash, I gotta do it. And they do it, and that's what really puts them over the edge on him, and I think it's why she tries to help him so much, and it's just like, she kind of takes an interest in him after that, and that kind of kind of noble sacrifice, really putting himself on the line. That's kind of not quite what she expected from potentially a, Death Watch style Mandalorian. That she probably sees the true spirit of like more modern Mandalorians in him. And you kind of want them to interact some more going forward. And the question is like, when theoretically can that happen? In the sense that I think at some point we have to see the backstory of how Gideon got the Darksaber, which I guess would be him, a flashback of him leading an attack with the Empire against the Mandalorians on Mandalore. The question is like, when do you get around to that is what I'm not quite sure about, because I think you are going to eventually have to do a thing where like the Mandalorian sees the Darksaber and suddenly realizes like, oh, that's the weapon of a Jedi, and like he learns sort of like the history of like that and so on. What his reaction to Ahsoka, I suppose, is going to be pretty telling. But yeah, in the end, as he leaves, that's the quest. He is told where Ahsoka is right now, the specific like town on the specific planet, and that you have to find Ahsoka Tano. And basically, when you meet her, tell her I, Bo-Katan, sent you, and she'll be more trusting of you. Because of course, it'd just be Ahsoka suddenly coming into contact with a random Mandalorian she's never seen before. Obviously, in this case, if he has the child with him, she's probably going to be interested straight away. But that's the thing. That's what we've been waiting for sort of since the introduction of the child, is basically no one is familiar with this species. No one who sort of knows Yoda has sort of met the child yet. So Ahsoka seeing the child is going to be straight away interesting to tell us, does she know anything specific about the species, or is everything she knows basically just what she knows of Yoda? And what I mean by that, is it a thing where like even people who know Yoda very well just have no idea what his species is? Or is it just something we've never been told, but that, say, the likes of Obi-Wan, Dooku, characters like that are actually familiar with Yoda's species, because the Jedi have like access to all this like information. So of course, him being the Jedi Master for so long, there has to be information on his species in the archives and so on. So has she come across that? That's probably the main telling thing of like, if Ahsoka knows, we can get our answers on Yoda's species straight away. If it's a mystery to even Ahsoka, that would suggest that we have to find someone like really old, ancient, who does know about the species to find the information. So that's all pretty interesting to me. But yeah, this episode really changed things up. Introduction of an important character in Bo, the setup for Ahsoka coming back, and probably also just equally as important is him encountering Mandalorians who aren't like him, who have a different way of doing things, with like taking the helmet off and so on. That has given his life sort of meaning and structure, following the creed and stuff like that, the way of the Mandalore. But now that he sees that there are other people he can sort of respect who do things differently, will he change at all to, go along with that? That's going to be kind of interesting as well. I'm guessing a lot of this will also change whenever, I guess, he encounters Boba Fett. In that Boba Fett, I guess, would be trained by Jango. And then they're probably going to have to confer to us, the specifics on Jango in terms of, is Jango along the same lines as the Death Watch in terms of his Mandalorian sort of culture, or is he more along the lines of a Bo-Katan? And how does that exactly work? Because like his armor, I guess they're confirming, is full-on Mandalorian armor. So what's the situation here? So all those elements of like the characters that we know from other media is super interesting. because those are the characters who can give information about like Baby Yoda and the quest to meet the other Jedi and so on. Because his quest, he feels, is going to be over once he brings Baby Yoda to a Jedi. In this case, he thinks it will be Ahsoka. But I don't think it's just going to be like that. I'd be surprised if Ahsoka just like took Baby Yoda to sort of like on. I suppose this really depends on, is there a setup for like another series coming at some point? I think there's been rumors that like maybe there's a more female-centric series focused maybe on Ahsoka and Sabine. And what if the Mandalorian saw sort of the transition of the child is handed off to Ahsoka, and the child is now a character in that show with Ahsoka, and maybe the Mandalorian can like appear on both shows or something like that. I don't know, because people I think are invested in his relationship with the child, so I don't know if you'd want to do that, meaning that Ahsoka would probably just have to direct him to wherever she feels he can get information on the homeworld of Yoda's species, which I would guess would probably be finding information in like a Jedi temple or something like that, potentially even like going to the Jedi temple on Coruscant, which would be crazy if we went there, but I don't really know how reasonable that is. So yeah, they're my thoughts on this episode. Really, really positive about this one. I hope they kind of back it up in the next episode going forward, and that they don't sort of draw out a lot of these teases too much, and that, you know, we want to see Boba Fett do something. We want to see Ahsoka. We don't want to be waiting like multiple episodes to get to the characters we've just had set up. But yeah, overall, very positive about this episode. So in the comments, let me know what your thoughts were, but that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.